Greetings, everyone. It is Wednesday. What? Artcasters on a Wednesday? That's a little
What
odd.
is going on?
We'll get to the reason why, and it'll kind of tie into our topic and everything. But the gang's all here again. We got Corey with us tonight because I haven't talked to Corey in a little while. And so I wanted to get Corey on, and I had to move the Artcasters up. So who knows? Maybe we'll have some different people watching that maybe aren't available on the normal Thursday that we do it. But let's do what we always do and kind of go around the table and introduce ourselves and tell us where people can find our work and anything we have to promote. And so the thing I have to promote is the same thing I had to promote last week, and it is this poster that Josh did for me for my birthday, which was awesome when I got this thing. I still have to edit this video, and I'm going to put it on my Patreon of the whole birthday celebration and everything. But this was a gift to Josh, and he also gave me the actual the prints like this. So they're on my website at circworks.com. Where is that? Yeah, circworks.com, and and they're limited edition. I think there's only like 5 of them left. So you definitely want to pick these up if you want. It's Josh's interpretation of my comic book, Young and the Dead. So check that out. That's what I'm promoting today. And it's also the thumbnail on this video too. So what about you, Josh? I've already promoted something of yours. You got anything else you want to promote?
Well, let's see. So that's exciting. I hope you sell some of those. They're pretty cool. And it was fun to play in that sandbox with your characters, man. And Young and the Dead, you guys should pick up from his website as well, because it's a good story. 2 stories is my nice underground indie autobio slice of life, bringing it back to like the 1990s when this was actually something people were doing in comics. No, there's other autobio cartoonists out there, but still, pick this up at Amazon. It's 122 pages. It's a heavy read, so if you're like 15 or under, do not buy it. But if you're an adult and capable of handling kind of heavy themes of mental illness and faith and ultimately redemption in a fallen world, this is the book for you. So nice hand-lettered, hand-inked, just flying off the shelves. I'm trying to do like a home shopping network type thing tonight. Anyhow, so act now, because these things are flying off the shelves. But seriously, actually, as an indie cartoonist, your support and help helps keep us doing all these shows and stuff. So yeah.
Awesome. And like I mentioned, we got Corey back again. Corey, what do you have to promote?
Nothing. I just finished everything. So I'm in between stuff. But if you haven't seen the cartoon that Jim Lujan and I made, go to his channel and check that out. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I've got all my animations gathered in one page. And if you haven't seen any of my animated shorts, then you can go to coreykerr.com/online. Go check out some of those things, I suppose. Or go watch the most recent screen printing video I did. That was a fun one.
It
Yeah,
is.
that's pretty cool.
It is really cool. And actually, it's funny because Corey like downplays it even in the video, but his first attempt at screen printing far supersedes like my 5th to 10th attempt at screen printing, and that's when I had like an instructor and a whole screen printing lab and stuff. So it's worth checking out, and you might actually learn some cool tricks for screen printing just watching it.
Were you in high school doing that?
Well, yeah, that too. It's a little different though. In high school, we didn't know to rig like the ends or anything like that. But yeah.
Okay, because I mean I'm 40, so I don't know. It's a direct one-to-one comparison between kid Josh and old man Corey.
But like even screen printing labs in college, like where I had access to like a full lab and stuff. You did a good job. You done good.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was. The ones I showed turned out well. Yeah, the ones I didn't show, I've got 3 or 4 over there that they're all smeared and weird looking and stuff. So it was fun. Yeah.
It probably took about a year to get the one that you screen printed on yourself by accident off, but other than that, no. It is a cool video, though. Corey, where can everybody check out your work other than that?
Just CoreyCurr.com. That's where everything is. So Instagram and Twitter and YouTube. And I'm actually wearing my basic attention token shirt because I'm now an official BAT endorsed creator or whatever that means. So anyway,
what is you have to forgive my ignorance.
Okay, without I'm just learning about it now. Yeah, everybody's ignorant of this, myself included. But okay. How do you say this in a short way? I'm so bad at being succinct. Google, Facebook, and everybody else are really evil, and they've been illegally downloading everybody or illegally tracking everybody for years, unethically, and all kinds of different stuff. The guy who invented JavaScript and started Mozilla Firefox broke off and started his own thing that is a privacy-based browser.
Okay,
and it's starting to pick up pretty good. And so what they pay people for their attention in cryptocurrency, and then you can turn around and take that and tip creators with the cryptocurrency that you earn, the BAT, the basic attention token. You turn around and do that. Okay. So I don't know. I don't want to make it a whole cryptocurrency discussion, but it is interesting. And Google just pretended to kind of do the same thing. So Google just released that they are killing third-party cookies, which is a really big deal. That's been around for a long time. And they're going out of their way to not do that, except if you use Google search. So if you use Google search, they'll still track everything that you do everywhere. But if you don't, they're not going to track you anymore. So they have been tracking you doing everything everywhere the whole time. And they just announced that they're no longer doing that type of thing. So that's going to shift you're going to see a lot of changes. I mean, with Facebook in Australia, with the EU and Google, with California and New York and privacy laws and COPPA and things like that, there's going to be a giant shift in the way the internet runs. So I'm just trying to get ahead of it. I don't think the Brave browser is the answer, but I do think that it's disruptive enough to put pressure on the bad guys. So anyway, so I signed up and I'm on there. If anybody else is on there, you can tip me BAT tokens or whatever those are called. I don't know how to pronounce it all, but you can tip me BAT or whatever. And it's kind of just a circular economy outside of selling your soul to advertising. Cool. Which is ironic because I've started reaching out to all kinds of different companies for sponsorships and stuff like that. But that's between me and them, not between me and the giant faceless mega corporations using deep machine learning to manipulate society. So I don't feel bad about it.
Yeah, I've been making a conscious effort to move away from a lot of that. Like I'm rarely on. I mean, I'm on YouTube, which of course is Google. So, but yeah, as far as Facebook, I mean, I'll post if I've got something to promote or whatever. But I'm trying to stay away from the feeds and everything like that. And I haven't been on Instagram in forever. So, but anyway, but maybe that's. But and part of that'll lead into sort of our discussion today. Me, trying to, you get in the habit of doing certain things a certain way, and trying to break from that can be difficult. And we're going to talk a little bit about sort of rebooting and reinvention, because, as I said, I haven't really got a chance to talk to Corey. We used to do the 48-hour art check, and so we've kind of moved away from that. Josh and Corey, and sometimes myself, have a new show that we're doing, the Indie Review Show, and that kind of replaced the 48-hour art check. So we've moved on from there. So that's one way of sort of reinventing yourself. So I want to talk about that and just some other things that I'm trying to do in my business and personal life, kind of shifting away from just some of the things that I've just become accustomed to or become used to, and just trying to kind of elevate myself. So that's kind of what we're talking about. But honestly, to be completely honest, the main reason why I just wanted to get together was just to talk shop with my friends, because we don't get to do that as much anyway. So if this conversation ends up going in other directions, that's all pretty cool as well. So anyway, so the reason why we're doing this on Wednesday is because I started this leadership training. I don't know if you would call it a course, program, whatever. And it's pretty. I did it last weekend, and it kind of you kind of have to shut yourself off from everything else, because the main thing is that you have to be committed, and you have to. It's all online and everything, but yeah, you have to be there, and you have to make sure you're not going to be interrupted by anything other than an emergency or whatever. And it's basically, whatever it can be adjusted to whatever you need to focus on, whether that's your business, your family, whatever the case is. If whatever is important to you is kind of what you're working on. For a lot of people, it's being closer with the faith or whatever. So you just kind of go into it with whatever you want, and it's just been. I've done the first weekend, and the next one actually starts tomorrow. So I wouldn't be able to do the Artcasters tomorrow. So, and I didn't want to. And a big part of this is also, taking responsibility and and kind of making your attention be known, what you're going to do, and making things happen. So rather than just saying, well, I can't do the Artcasters. There's no reason why I can't do both. So we switch things around, and I can still do all the things that I need to do. So, but yeah, I mean, it's been kind of a crazy, emotional ride. There's been a lot of stuff that's kind of been holding me back that I have that I've got beyond. And like I said, I mean, I seriously, I broke down, and I'm not. If you ask my girlfriend or my family, I'm not somebody who breaks down and cries and things, but in this I did. And there were some things in my past that I had to let go and sort of take responsibility, because a lot of it is just, people just want to be right, and they're attached to that being right rather than being happy. So yeah. And I mean, and I used to get so frustrated. And I've went through cycles of this where, I got really deep into the political stuff. And not to say that, that stuff is important too, because it's what's going on in our world. But I found that I was consumed by, what was going around me politically and everything like that. And there were times where I stepped aside and I felt better, and then I got back into it, and it charges you. You get all these, but for me anyway, and it just kind of consumed me and everything, and it wasn't good for me creatively, my personal life and everything like that. So that's one of the things that kind of helped, and it's just this weird transformation. So I thought, since based on us kind of moving away from us deciding that the 48-hour art check wasn't working for us anymore, so we're going to do something new, we're going to move on, to me kind of deciding that the way that I've been going about my life, I mean, I've been it's like the definition of insanity. And not that my work, not that I haven't been successful doing what I'm doing, but I've always felt that there's this limit, there's this cap to what I can do, because maybe I don't believe enough in myself, or whatever the case is, that I just need to get beyond that, and just, instead of just getting by, I want to thrive, and I want to have everything that I want out of life. So, and I just had my 50th birthday, so I'm not getting any younger. So just going through this whole thing, it's just been awesome, and I'm just looking forward to this weekend, because this weekend gets a little more focused on our goals and things like that. But
nice.
But yeah, it's just been amazing. So I just thought it's hard to go into it without getting too deep into it. But yeah, it's just been this paradigm shift, I guess, for me. So yeah, it's awesome. So I figured I'd talk about that, and figured we talk about 40-hour art check and everything. So I don't know on that front, what because I mean I know we've talked about it. You guys have talked about it before, but what was the sort of the impetus, and how did you guys come to that decision? Because that was a decision you made, and kind of informed me later on that, oh, we're not doing that anymore. So how did you guys come to that conclusion, and reasoning behind that and everything?
You want to hit that, Corey?
I'm trying to think back. I put it in my past. I killed it. I buried it. Now I got to dig it up. I try to pay attention to how I feel about things, and and that's really important to me to kind of pay attention to, is this still something that I want to do? Is this still something that is giving me what I want? Are there, we had some very kind of specific goals when we started it, and it shifted, it changed, it was good. I feel like if I were to do it again, I would do it again 100%.
The art check.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it was great. I kind of knew you guys, but I didn't know you guys really well. I had been on Artcasters a couple times. I think it was maybe 3 or 4 times when we started that. I think it wasn't that many, so that's not a lot, so it was great. So I don't begrudge it at all, but it had become, for me, I started to feel like this isn't who I want to be. I don't want to be somebody that is constantly talking about my own stuff. I was more interested in it started. So I'll tell you, this is a stupid analogy, but this is the most accurate analogy I can get to. I was a huge Weird Al fan as a kid.
Oh, you and me both. All right, I still am.
So I like Weird Al. I don't think I listened to his stuff a lot lately, but I probably still have most of the songs from the 80s and 90s memorized. A huge Weird Al fan, and he got LASIK surgery.
I know what you're talking. I know where you're going at.
Yeah, so he would go on stage,
long hair.
He'd go on stage, and he put fake glasses on, and he had his hair and everything, and he started to talk. So he changed, and so in the late 90s, he cut his hair short, and he took his glasses off, and everybody was like, "What's going on?" And he's like, "I felt like I was wearing a Weird Al costume rather than being Al Yankovic." Mm-hmm. So he started to feel really inauthentic, and that is kind of how I started to feel, because I am not super comfortable promoting myself. It's a place that I'm trying to get better at, like being more comfortable about talking about the stuff that I'm doing and whatnot. But I also I would rather talk about the other stuff that people are doing and be able to analyze and whatever. And then, so that's kind of for me where it started, is I felt inauthentic. I felt like I had, and not that it started that way. I think it started from a place of authenticity. But it started to move into a place where it was like, oh, I'm going to do the 48-hour art check dance again. And it was just like, it became very rote, and it became very whatever, I mean, Josh and I started it because we were struggling to stay on task. We were both working really hard on our projects, but it was like these spikes and valleys, where we'd work really intensely and then crash, and then work really intensely and crash. And I was just like coming off of my master's, which burned me out and was ridiculous. And now, after close to 300 episodes, what was it, 280 something?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've always, for at least the past 20 years, spent a significant amount of time working on personal projects, but not in a healthy and sustainable way. And I feel like the art check got us there, but then it stopped serving its purpose.
Yeah.
You know, it's like continuing to do something that helps, but it isn't helping anymore. And so as soon as I recognized that, I started to feel like I was just doing something that wasn't who I was anymore. And it felt very weird and kind of creepy. And so I just mentioned to Josh, is like, are you feeling kind of done with this? Because I'm feeling kind of done with this. And he was like, yeah, actually. And I can't remember at what point in time Josh had mentioned what has become the Indie Review Show, but he was talking about, you know, it'd be really fun to just like start making content about indie comics. And I latched onto that super hard. I think I forced Josh to do that faster than he would have. I don't know if he would have done it or not, but you were talking about it, and I was like, yes, this now, let's do it. Let's go. This feels much more like something I want to invest my time in.
Yeah.
What I have been doing.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like for me, it was an interesting thing because I remember, I think I was talking about the idea of doing a book review show before we had kind of called it quits.
I think so too.
And part of it was I was just starting to notice, I've been doing this, and Scott's been doing this for a long time too. I've been doing it long enough to where I'm like, I can do a little self-promotion pitch because you just have to, like, especially early on, it was like, when it's like, this was my primary business, it's like I didn't have the choice to not promote, like myself. It's like you have to constantly be hustling. But there was something about it that was starting to be a drag too. And I also felt like it was one of those things where I got the vibe, and I think it was like a shared thing. It's like, I was like, I like hanging out with Corey, so that's cool. But, and we both kind of expressed this, the idea that like the check itself just started feeling like this chore we had to get through to just have a conversation.
Yeah.
That's
exactly where it started. I was like,
yeah,
I don't want to hang out with Scott and Josh and Kathy. I don't want to like have to do this song and dance first.
Yeah. And I think if you're like I would definitely recommend it for somebody, especially somebody who's like new to kind of creating like a workflow and like needing to kind of like, I think the idea of having like accountability friends and whatnot is good. The other thing we realized is just like, we kind of already do that anyway. Like we're kind of going to hold each other accountable and talk about the stuff we do anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just the point where it just started to feel like a drag. And then I remember we had to get our carpets cleaned. And so I had to pull all my books off my bookshelf, and it gave me this opportunity to geek out and alphabetize my books, because I'm weird and crazy like that. Like I like all my books perfectly alphabetized. And then I realized we had to get an extra shelf because I have like a whole, and it's not like a ton of graphic novels. Like I actually know people who own more, but it's like, it's a giant tall shelf just stuffed with graphic novels. And like most of them, like a lot of people I know haven't read. And I'm literally like stocking the shelves, and I'm thinking like, oh yeah, I remember like being really, like thinking about the different things that I was inspired to do from those different books as I'm like putting them on the shelf. And I'm like, we got to do a show where we talk about this, because there's plenty of shows. And I think it kind of mixed, because I was also sending out a lot of press releases and realizing like there aren't a ton of comic review shows that I'm aware of. And then the ones that are out there are like very mainstream. And so you have to have this conversation where you're like, yeah, this isn't like a superhero book, that kind of thing, if you're a guest on there. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool if there was a show that like just specifically reviewed indies? So then we just started talking about it. And I think like for both of us, that just sounded like something better. And then just selfishly, it had more potential, like on a marketing level too, to reach other people than just artists. because like we often find ourselves in a scenario where it's like we're building audiences of other artists, which we love and we value, but it's like, if you're wanting readers, you got to also hit people who don't draw the comics, right? Like just people who buy comics and read comics. And it was like, maybe that's an angle in. So I don't like, once again, and Corey can get into this, but I think this is good with the topic, because the nice thing and the scary thing about reinventing is it could be worse for us than 48-hour art check.
It's definitely more time consuming.
Yeah. And then on the same note too, like we have a very small subscriber count because we're trying to do it right and kind of have it its own YouTube channel. And so it feels in a weird way like stepping backwards a little bit, but we both talked about it, and it's like, we want to actually try to kind of do it right, like structure a show, have like, content that is compelling for the viewers, and then and try to like launch it right so that it's like got its own channel, and then it can have its own independent growth, and hopefully like the algorithm starts kind of suggesting it and stuff. But along with that's risk. And I think that maybe, I don't know, Scott, like maybe I'm jumping ahead, but I feel like that's one of the things that keeps people from trying different things is fear. But I'm also like a person who, if I get that sense, like I'll be open about this too. I shouldn't, because it's going to be really disappointing if it doesn't happen, if I publicly talk about it to more than just friends, but what the hell. So I submitted 2 stories for an Eisner. The chances of me getting an Eisner are like slim to nothing, because it's a fairly political process. Like it is kind of about who you know and how many people know you. And if it's like between me and like a Marvel artist who's worked on X-Men or something that did an indie, like, you know what I mean? They're going to go with the one that sold more books, has a much bigger likelihood to win. But I went through all this doubt and like these thoughts of like, well, that wouldn't work. It's just a waste of postage, that kind of thing. And I'm like, that's a good sign. I should do it. So I just like printed up a shipping like a label, and I followed the directions and like did the whole thing and subbed it out. And I'm going to do that like as many times as I can with things, because I think the scary thing about reinventing yourself or trying something new or trying something you haven't tried before or trying something you have tried before and maybe failed at is the fact that like failure sucks, and like, risk sucks, and it can suck, because it's like you always have the potential to like have it not work the way you have it in your head. But I mean, like, if you're in a scenario where I like Corey was describing, where things are kind of dull and like you're not feeling it, you're not feeling the passion for what you're doing, and there's something you're into, I tend to think that energy has a lot more possibility to like go somewhere. Because if you're not into something, like we all know this from art, like if you're not into drawing and then you try to sell a drawing that you didn't even like when you were doing it, like it usually isn't going to sell too well, because people can tell. Like Corey, you've done crits and like of like students who've not been into what they're drawing, and it's just like super transparent. So I'd rather have like us like fail epically and have fun doing it, and get the opportunity to read these new books and know we gave it our best shot, and have fun doing it, and do it like right, like the way we want to do it.
And also I feel like I still feel bad, and I know Scott doesn't hold any ill will or anything. I still feel bad how it all went down, because we're making it sound like it was like this really deliberative process that we went
was like
through
2
over
days.
the course of months. It was like several conversations in the space of maybe 12 hours, and we killed a show that we almost had been doing for 3 years and started a new one. So it was like really fast. And I remember thinking, oh man, I wish Scott was in on these conversations, because but it was really quick. And something that's weird about Josh and I don't know what this is. It even sounds strange saying it out loud, but like we tend to share slumps. You know, like the twins in G.I. Joe, where like one of them gets punched and the other one feels it. It's been weird over the years that you know, whenever like one of us shows up and we're like, oh man, blah 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 blah, the other one is always like, me too. And so it was just another one of those like synchronicity things where I was like, I don't know how to say this exactly, but I hate the art check. Josh is like, me too, and I'm like, oh good, let's kill it. And so,
and I think it was one of those things where we'd both been feeling it for a while, and neither of us had really said it. So it was like once that was like cracked open, it was like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a drag, and you know, I think we had similar reasons for it being a drag, you know.
Yeah. Well, and then
that has to do with reinvention, right? Because if you kind of just go with the norm, you can end up like stuck in a scenario you don't like, you know.
Yeah. And you were mentioning something that I'm realizing about myself right now is I have started, Scott and I were talking before the show started, I've started reaching out to companies and brands. Instead of waiting to get big enough to have people care about me or whatever, I'm just like, you know what? I like this product. And I am shocked at how that is going. I don't want to say too much because I don't have contracts with some of these, but like Aurora Heated Apparel literally was just me emailing them and saying like, hey, I'm an artist, illustrator, animator, teacher, and I make YouTube and Instagram stuff, and I like your stuff. Let's do something. And they were about it. And then I just did that with a brand that like people have heard of, and they responded immediately. And said that they were kind of interested in exploring stuff. And I don't know if it's gonna pan out or anything, but it reminded me of what you were saying with the Eisners, Josh, is it's like, I would never think in a million years that any of these companies would be interested in talking to me. But like the worst thing that can happen is that they say, nah. And then I go about my day and nothing else happens. But the best thing that can happen is like all of a sudden, I'm talking to cool people who are making cool things, and I'm associated with that, and I'm helping them get the word out on their stuff. And it has been fascinating to me just sticking your neck out there and just saying, hey, I like this thing that you guys do. Are you interested in doing something together? It's interesting to me how frequently that works out.
Yeah, and I would second that in the sense of like that's been my experience in art in general. I mean, like there's some accounts that I got, you know, when I was heavily freelancing that are like big names that came to me, and that was cool. Like Scholastic was a client I had tried for years and never got responses for. And then after like 5 years of freelancing, approached me about doing stuff for a magazine, and it wasn't based on like my solicitation. That was just like they saw my art and were like, yeah, you'd be really good for this like feature for like highlights. And they had me doing highlights for like 5 months in a row. And that was one of those clients I wanted more just to add on my list, you know. But then there's other clients like Wired magazine, which is a huge, you know, client. And that I got an editorial by just doing a cold call, like you know, like an email version of a cold call. Like, I'm an artist. I like what you guys do. Can I do some illustrate? Do you have any need for an illustration? And then like a month later, they're like, boom, it's funny you mentioned that. Your t-shirt, this kind of reminds us of this article. Can you do that kind of thing for this article?
And that is something that I talk about all the time. I stole it from Dan Stiles, who does a lot of gig posters, but he calls it self-plagiarization. And it's like you make stuff that you want to make, and then companies will come to you and they will say, hey, I want you to make this thing just like the one that you made, but do it for us. I had somebody reach out to me, I don't know, it was probably 6 months ago now. And they're like, hey, we want you to do some hand lettering. And I'm like, I don't do that. Like that's not because I'm thinking of like Carolyn Sewell and Hish and those guys who are like very good at it. And it was funny because they're like, no, look, and they brought up my Instagram and showed me an example of my work, and they're like, we just want you to do it like this. And I was like, oh, well, if you want me to do what I do, then yes, then I will do that for you. Anyway, and it was great, but it was really funny because I didn't think of myself in the way that they were thinking of me, and they used my own work to prove that I did do the thing that they wanted. And I was like, oh,
right,
cool.
Well, I think that's a good point though, because like, and I think this touches on, this is so good for like anyone who might be starting or wanting clients, right? It's like the biggest thing that there's two things that are going to hold you back, and both are kind of in your control outside of just dumb luck. Dumb luck always plays into it. Anyone who pretends there's no luck involved is lying. You know, you need a good portfolio, and you need a solid portfolio, and you need something about your portfolio that makes you appealing, whatever it is, like some kind of thing, some kind of angle. Whether it's that you're a chameleon and you can work in a million styles, or it's that you've honed like a particular style that can be used. Maybe it's not fashionable when you hone it, but by the time it kind of rolls around and like suddenly like everybody wants like feathered, heavy black illustration work, right? Like by the time that comes back into fashion, you happen to be the guy who's aligned, right? Like that's where the luck's involved, right? The point is there's got to be some kind of catch about your portfolio that's going to like make somebody want to hire you. But the only thing that's going to prevent you from that is just not putting in the work in your portfolio, right? Like that, period. Like there's no other way about it. Or maybe if you're just one of those people like I am with cars, where it's like no matter how much work I put into a car, I'm not going to be a mechanic. Like I'm just really crappy at it. Like I try, it just doesn't happen. So there's that. That's number one. And then number two is like, you know, if you let fear prevent you from taking a risk in like approaching, and I only say that because it's like that's literally the battle I face all the time. I feel that way before every interview I do, before approaching publishers, before sending my work out, like before, like, you know, finding a literary agent, all of that stuff. Like every time there's like this moment of just sheer terror. And I have to remind myself, like I've heard no before. It kind of reminds me, you know, it's kind of like when I asked my wife out on our first date, you know, it's like I had been shot down by people in the past before that, like when asking for somebody to go on a date with me. I had that experience too, where like you ask a girl you think is interested in you on a date, and then you end up on the date and they just think it's like a friends thing, and you're like, oh crap, like that sucks, you know. But you're like, okay, cool. But like I had all those failures, and what's sad is like if I had let those failures like define whether I was going to kind of take a risk and pursue something, like I may have never met my wife, you know. So it's like, yeah. Anyhow,
yeah. Well, also think of when you applied for the Xeric. You could have easily said, "Oh, I can't. You know, I'll never get this." And I think you had people, and you may even yourself, but you've had people saying that you wouldn't get it or whatever, and you did. So, I mean, based on that, why hesitate to apply for an Eisner?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like I've had the Xeric thing happen, and by all means, I know a lot of artists who were active at that time who applied for it. I have no idea. I still, to this day, I attribute that like, you know, maybe 1% to me sending the package and finishing the comic, and then like 99% to luck. But still,
but without that 1%, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. And I do think that's part of reinventing. It's like, you know, I don't know if that makes sense. But I think that's a huge part of reinventing is every reinvention requires risk, and you shouldn't do uncalculated risks, because that's just like, like, I don't know. That's
well,
like,
I think you need to take into account, worst case scenario. I just think, like, if you're looking at it and it's like, okay, so if this doesn't go well, I lose thousands of dollars and I can't eat and I'm going to be homeless, versus like, if this doesn't go well, I will feel silly in front of people for a short period of time, and then I will forget that happened. There's a big range in that, and sometimes I feel like just doing like the worst case scenario analysis is really helpful, because you're like, oh, right, mentally this felt like a physical threat, but in reality it's a social inconvenience at worst. Like, what happens if I reach out to some company that I love and I say, hey, I like you guys, let's do something, and they don't answer, or they come back and they say no. Like, that's it. That's the worst thing that can happen. I mean, even if they came back and they're like, you suck and we hate you, which is probably the worst thing, I will then move on. There's no like physical permanence of that result.
Yeah.
So, but other things, like, I'm going to spend my whole paycheck on lottery tickets. So it's like, well, that's dumb. And the result of that is likely to be permanently detrimental. So I always take that into account.
Yeah. And it's, and it can be scary. And, like when I enrolled in this program that I'm in right now, it wasn't inexpensive. So, I'm like, am I gonna get my money's worth out of it? So, and there was actually one part that kind of worked, because I've done like mastermind groups and things like that before, and they've been beneficial. But I've been in mastermind groups before where, I mean, doing the 48-hour art check, and just the way us three are, we're pretty good at holding ourselves accountable, and it's also helpful to have you guys to support me and myself to support you guys. But I'm pretty good at, if I say I'm going to do something, if I set out to make if I set a goal, to me, I feel like I failed if I don't hit that goal. So I do whatever I can to hit that. So I've been in mastermind groups before where I go in with like 6-7 different goals, and they're like, whoa, I don't know, that's a lot. Maybe you should just focus on a couple. And then most of the other people in the group are focusing on a couple and struggling with it. And then I come in each week and like, oh yeah, I did this one, I did that one. And I'm trying not to brag, but so it's like, and not that, and those mastermind groups were less expensive than what I'm in right now, and I got something out of those, and it was worth it. And it was just the connections and all that stuff too. But I could have probably done all that stuff on my own. Where with this one, the way it works is if you sign up early enough, they give you like this coach that will meet with you, every other week or whatever, twice a month, and kind of get you ready for the course. So it's sort of one of those things where it's advantageous to sign up as early as you can. So I did that, and I'm working with the coach. The whole thing was very beneficial, helping me with the goals.
I just want to clarify, there aren't thetans involved in these meetings, are there?
They're not what?
There's no like thetans or like.
I don't know what thetans are. I don't know what thetans are.
As long as they're not having you hold like 2 cans.
I don't know what that is. Is that like a cult thing? Yeah, everyone thinks it's not a cult, and it's
not getting sucked into Scientology.
No. Oh, okay, no. So it's not a cult, and it's not the secret. Those are the two criticisms it gets.
That was an ill-tasted joke, but
yeah, but it's weird because you can't really talk about it, and it's not because it's not the reason why you can't talk about it isn't because it's like, it's a cult or something, and you're trying to
it actually just sounds like life coaching. I was just making
but
I was making a really bad joke.
Yeah, but the reason you can't talk about it is because if somebody else wants to go, I mean, it's very much, I didn't know going into it what it was, and if I did, that would have ruined the experience. It wouldn't, if I knew it was coming, because a lot of it is just these revelations that come out, like, oh my God, and just, you know, so that's why you can't really talk. You can talk about the gist of it, but anyway, so yeah. But going back to what I was saying, so I was working with this coach, moving through these, you know, the exercises and kind of holding me accountable and everything. And towards the end, we kind of recapped and we found out where I was, because I think I had been working with him for a couple months. And he said, okay, look where you come in your goals from when we started to where you are now. And then he said something that kind of worried me a little bit, because he says that's what this is all about. That's what this course, and I keep saying a course, I don't know what to call it. It's a transformational leadership. So that's what this is all about. And that kind of made me pause. I'm like, okay, and this is great and everything, but I could have probably done what I'm doing right now on my own. So I'm like, if this is what I paid all this money for, if it's just more of this, more of kind of what I've been through before in the mastermind groups, I was like, yeah, I'm a little worried now. But, you know, I was open, I went into it, and it was, I mean, and I've only been through half of it, and I already feel like I got my money's worth. And
that's awesome.
And then there's the thing after that, it's not part of this program, but it's in addition to that, where you really, really focus on your goal. And it's not as intensive. It's not, because these first two are just like I said, you got to kind of focus, you know, make sure you're not distracted in any way. After that, it kind of goes into where you meet, like, I think twice a month or whatever, and it's not as intensive, but it's a longer thing. And awesome. You know, I'm already like, yeah, I want to do that, because I see the potential. So yeah, and we'll see as we go on, you know, how this changes and what this does, you know, for the business and everything, and what I'm doing and my productivity and everything. But I'm just, you know, but yeah, so it's there's some risk involved there. I mean,
yeah, there is. And by the way, I want to clarify too, like, I even fell into a trap there, which you know, by making a joke there. No,
I'm
really.
laughing at Ryan's comment.
Yeah, but what's funny about that though, and because I've had leadership training, like, just for management and stuff, and like one thing you'll notice, like, the first week of those training sessions is like half the class are just like jackasses who are just being sarcastic, right? And eventually, like, that sarcasm and the vulnerability, like the sarcasm and the kind of joking breaks down, and vulnerability opens up, and then you actually see people grow. And so to me, I think it's actually cool that you're, like, going into these with, like, an open mind, and like, because if you go to something like that, you know, as like a super skeptic, it's like it may not work as effectively.
Well, and by nature, I am a skeptic.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not religious. I don't believe, and there's a lot of stuff that I don't really believe in. I'm very logical when it comes to stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So for me, that was difficult, you know, because I had that same feeling going in. Is this a cult? Are they going to try to convert me to some religion? Is it, you know, what is the thing here? And it's not that, you know, I mean, the way it's set up, if religion is important to you, or whatever, spirituality or whatever, then that's what it can be. It's kind of what you want it to be. But but it's just awesome. Giving you the tools to you know, create what you want. So
that's exciting, man.
Yeah, and like I said, we'll kind of the proof will be what happens next after I get through this and I start moving forward. But yeah, it was kind of, you know, in some ways I was spinning my wheels. There was some stuff that was working, but, you know, if you're going back to, and I don't think I finished that thought, but the definition of insanity, keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting the same results. So, but yeah, also going back to, and it's what's funny is when you started talking about the reason why you decided to you know, kill the art check, I wasn't aware that they were so similar, because, you know, Corey said, this isn't what I want to be, this isn't what I want to do, and it's kind of, and I was kind of in that same sort of not precipice or whatever, or crossroads, I guess. with just, yeah, I've gotta make this work. My big thing right now, my main goal, and I've probably talked about this before, is that I don't want to go back to a 9-to-5 job or something for an employer. I don't want to go back to having to work for clients and things like that, unless it's something I choose.
Yeah.
If something cool comes along, I want to be able to create my own, take the work, use the work that I create to, bring in an income and everything, and not have to rely on outside sources and all that kind of stuff. So, so that's kind of what I'm striving for. So, and I've already seen, progress. I mean, I've got a long way to go, but I still think this is going to, it's going to, execute that much faster. So.
That's so exciting. And honestly, that's a fairly large change. We started doing Artcasters, and like, this is when you and I started hanging out, because like I said, I was familiar with you like back in the BIPT days, but that was more of like, just kind of back and forth emails every once in a while. But
I want to address that comment too when you get done with your thought, Gary's comment.
But when we started actually hanging out and doing Artcasters, and I got to know you, it's like, you were working a 9-to-5 and then kind of coming home and like and doing this stuff on top of it. Mm-hmm. And I think better, and Corey can attest to this too, because he was constantly coming on the streams as well. And I think we were doing 48-hour art check around the same. Maybe we hadn't started it yet, but I remember when that it kind of collapsed, and the way you handled that situation and just quickly pivoted to like, no, I'm like not going to go for like a day job. Like I'm going to just kind of build these things, and kept your calm and cool.
We did an art check episode on that.
Yeah.
And for me, that's been my life. Up until I made that decision, it's been, at some point I worked full time as a freelancer. Sometimes I work part time, and then another part time as a freelancer. Sometimes I worked a full time job, but those jobs always ended. And that whole idea, at least, especially in this industry, of job security. And I'm not saying it doesn't. There are maybe certain jobs, but I know people in animation, they'll tell you, people in comics, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not job security. So it's like you have that false sense of security when you're at, when we have a job like that. Mm-hmm. So, and then for me, it's always like, and I put my heart into that stuff. And I didn't have any ownership of that or whatever, but I take pride in my work. So I did my best work. And it just, in the end, it's just like, you either get shit canned or whatever, or you get downsized, or so it's, your
family, as long as there's productivity and there's profit, that's when you're family. But the second there's a dip at all in productivity or profit, like, you're not family anymore. You're just
right. Exactly. And if it does, that's exactly true. And when I worked at these companies, I did feel like family, and we were friends. We did stuff together, outside of work and like retreats and everything. But in the end, once that's over, I don't hear from a lot of these people anymore. Certain jobs, every once in a while, I hear something, but that's, just, I to be honest, the people in the program I'm in right now, I feel like they're just, in this one weekend, I've bonded with them so much. And, and we're talking outside of that and everything, and knowing, like, my ex-girlfriend's the one that she's been through the whole training, and I see. Did I say ex-girlfriend, or did I say my girlfriend?
You said ex, yeah.
That's not what I meant. Well, the reason why I brought that up is because some of the stuff I'm getting past has to do with my exes, and some of the stuff I'm holding on to there. But no, so my girlfriend went through this, and I just see the way she is. And you guys have, she kind of helped put on my whole birthday thing, and kind of got you guys in, so you got a chance to know her a little bit. And I'm just like, yeah, I want a piece of that. I want to react to things the way she does, instead of the way I do, which isn't helpful. And that kind of, dovetails into what Gary was saying about the saying yes and saying no. And one of the things that she does, one of the things that you learn in this course is that it's like, because yes, I find that it's amazing when you start saying yes to things that you aren't expecting to, but also you just can't say yes to everything. You have to say no, because otherwise, it just,
yeah, you have to.
Yeah. And it feels, and sometimes it feels good to say yes. And usually I said, I've never really, it's almost like very few times have I said yes to something and regretted it, especially if it's something you're like, oh, I don't know, I've never done this before, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm getting better at this type of thing, because I kept telling people that if I would have went through this course like 7 years ago, before I started doing the YouTube, before I started opening up, before I made the decision to do things like Corey and I did when we went to Creative South, or me just like after I broke up with my ex-girlfriend, just deciding, I'm just going to go to Disneyland by myself, and
that was awesome.
Always. And got to visit with Josh and stuff, and always
was Star Wars Land open?
It was not open. No, the idea was I went there because I wanted to go there, because I thought when Star Wars Land opened, it was just going to be super busy, and then it kind of wasn't as busy, I guess, as a lot of people thought.
Yeah, it wasn't.
But now I can't go.
So. No. But here's the thing: like, so they say that the vaccine, like, this is what supposedly is going to happen. The vaccine, they're going to have enough vaccines for every adult in the U.S. by like May. And so that means by like June or July, that might be a trip that could actually happen. And if it does, I think that Scott, you and I and Corey should plan on riding the Millennium Falcon, because
that'd be awesome. And I've already told Corey that, because he mentioned maybe coming up there when it's not snowing and everything, and go out on kayaks or something. And I'm totally willing. I'm totally wanting to do that. I mean, that's I think everyone is. I think everyone's going to want to travel.
Yeah, a lot of good. Like, Corey's like in vacation territory, man. Also, I can buy some keychains that I designed up there.
Yeah.
But so going back to the saying no and everything, and the one thing that I find it's interesting when I started going through this course, it's all about a lot of it's about responsibility and taking responsibility. And a lot of times, and my girlfriend does this thing to me all the time, where I'll ask her help with something. And it's also about supporting other people, but it's about letting them support themselves. So if somebody comes to you like, oh, hey, I need your help with this and everything. And a lot of times, the reaction like my girlfriend will do is like, okay, well, what is it that you need to do to fix this situation on your own? And then you just realize, oh, yeah, I can handle this, and it's kind of like,
so she walks you through it. That's awesome.
Sometimes walks me through it, or just sometimes, because sometimes it'll just, because I got in the habit, like when I was talking about going to California, I had always, whenever I drove to California, I always relied on my partner to kind of, be the navigator. Like, I'll drive, you just tell me where to turn and everything like that. So I couldn't tell you how to get to California. And so it was, when I went out there on my own, I was like, I've driven to California probably 5 or 6 times, maybe more.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to get there. So, but I just like trusted, we've got this awesome navigation now. I'm going to trust in that, and I'm going to do it. And I'm going to pay attention, because before I would just go past the turn off, because I wasn't, I wasn't present, and I would just be relying on somebody to tell me where to turn and everything. But
yeah,
it's just a matter of taking that responsibility. So it is, in saying no, it's not just like, nah, I can't do that, but just kind of turning around, like, do you really need my help with this? Is this something that you can handle yourself? And, with the little, with the little coaxing or whatever, or a little, that realization, you can, set somebody else up for success rather than just doing it for them. And it's, kind of like teach someone to fish rather than, or whatever that analogy is. But
so, Scott, you said you've never said yes to something and regretted it?
I said as a general rule. Why are you going to ask me?
Well,
You're going to ask me to do some animation? You're going to ask me to do some animation?
No, I'm saying my own personal experience. I continue to say yes to all kinds of things and regret them.
Okay. All right. Well, it depends on what it is. If it's like, I'm not talking about if somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, can you do this project for me?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to." That kind of thing. Usually, I say no to. But there's been a couple situations like. So another thing that this training is helping me do is because I want to take what I learned and I want to be able to share it with others. I want to, I want to sort of do what I'm doing with the Making Comics 101, but like more on a one-on-one or more one-on-one situation. So somebody reached out to me, wanted to know if I could do like a mentorship with them. And at first I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. I mean, I thought about doing that, but I'm not really ready to do that yet. And then it's like, no, this is the opportunity right now. This is what I'm going to do. So I'm like, what's the easiest way to figure this out? And I figured I knew I was kind of struggling with my Patreon. It wasn't, really going where it was. I'm like, you know what, here's an opportunity for me to take one problem I have and work a solution into it and do something that I've been wanting to do. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to create the easiest thing for me to do right now, whether it stays here, whether we move on to another platform, is to create a coaching tier on my Patreon, just as another tier. So I created two tiers. I think one was around 45 or something. One was 55, and one was a group one, which I figured, or maybe it was 35. And I figured people would probably be more apt to do that. But the idea with the group one is that in the beginning, it might make more sense to do, because if I don't have a lot of people signing up, you're still getting one-on-one, training until other people, sign up, and then you've got to kind of share your time with everyone else. But person reached out to me, signed up for the one-on-one training, and then I worked with him. I think I met with him a couple times, and then he's starting a comic company. He's like, you know what, I want my artists to do this too, because part of it was kind of looking at some of the work and giving some critiques and some advice on what they could do to better their art. And then he's like, I want to pay for my artists to do this too. So right now I've got 3. So
what a cool thing to do as a comic company. I mean, I think that's actually really cool. And here's another thing, and Corey can definitely attest to this because he's a teacher. And this is the dark secret of teachers: is all teachers started as non-teachers, and had that moment where they stepped out of a classroom going, I still vividly remember the first time going to LCAD, and I'm like, this is LCAD. They teach there's things I disagreed with about the platform of LCAD, and I can talk about it publicly now because I'm not going to work there again probably. But it's it's a private college, so it's very profit motive driven. So they're less honest with grading, and I think that causes issues. They value retention over training. But when I'm going to teach at LCAD, I'm thinking of LCAD, and they do have some heavy hitters. They're the most recruited from school for Wizards of the Coast. And I'm like, there's guys at Wizards of the Coast that outpaint anything I can do. I thought of my classmates. I have classmates who've taught at LCAD, and they've worked for Wizards of the Coast, and they've had credits in Star Wars. And I'm like, who am I? What am I going to teach these kids? And then I sit in front of a classroom, and it's these kids don't know how to approach a client. They don't know how to draw a foreshortened arm, not just foreshortening. Half of them don't know how to open a file in Photoshop. And suddenly the only way you learn that you can teach is by being in front of people and being able to share your expertise. And Scott, you have a wealth of experience as a professional illustrator and designer. And to me, it's just anyone who's not you, who would hear you saying I can't believe somebody would want a mentor under me, would be that's insane.
Yeah. And Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Josh.
But I think this ties into the thing about reinvention, because I think the thing we need to be aware of as artists, and I try to be aware of this all the time, like, and I'm glad we're having this conversation, because today was one of my self-doubt days, where I saw my sales numbers dropping a bit on my book, and I'm like, that's 5 years. It's 5 years. Like, was it worth it? That kind of thing. And that's the process, man. I mean, that's the process. And even if it were like doing gangbusters, I'd find a way to try to self-sabotage it. That's what we do as creatives. And like, so half the fight of creativity and of entrepreneurship, or not even entrepreneurship, but just trying to do anything positive, right, is like I work out, and I don't work out like a jock at a gym. Like, I'm not a big buff dude. I've never been that. I probably never will be that, right? Every time I go to do that, I have that self-doubt hit where I'm like, well, I'm not like stacked. I don't have like a 10-pack. Like, I'm, like it's like these thoughts always are going to intrude on the possibility of you are going, not you, Scott, but like anyone is going to be the most effective enemy against themselves than anyone could possibly be. Even if you're dealing with like the worst bullies, like the biggest trick of like a bully. And, I'm a kid who grew up with bullies and stuff. And it was fun. I was on a comic book cast with a bunch of comedians called Comic Book Club that I've listened to for years. And I was stoked to be on it because it was like a Nerdist thing. So it's
to send me that link.
Yeah, I will. But what was funny was I got vulnerable on it, and just because my comic talks about a little bit of like schoolyard politics and being a nerd. And what's funny is like these are confident comedians. They're hilarious. They're so like on point with a mic that I forgot that they're a bunch of comic geeks too.
Yeah,
and they had that same experience too, and they read my book and connected to that. And like, but when you're being when we're stuck in like being myopic and kind of thinking it's the trick that bullies do so effectively, where it's like they can get in your head and then get you to doubt yourself and get you to believe their narrative that like, like in 5th grade, I dressed as Indiana Jones for a whole year. And that was socially the stupidest decision I've made in my life. However, in retrospect, it's one of my favorite stories about myself to tell people, because I was a pretty badass little kid. Like, I did not give a shit what any of the kids in that class thought for an entire year. I was like, I am Indiana Jones. I don't care what you guys say. And in retrospect, I'm like, that the power of like a bully or like it is not in the bully themselves, but it's in the ability to get you to doubt yourself and to believe their lie. And similarly, like we can be our own worst bully, and we can kind of prevent ourselves from taking those risks, from taking those changes. And I have had moments where I've given into thoughts where it's like I've been at a convention and I've walked past somebody I really admire and been like, maybe I should give them like my card or like talk to them or something. And then like, yeah, they don't care. Like, I've had plenty of moments like that in my life, but I've also had moments where I just like sacked up and like talked to the person and handed them a card, and it's never gone badly except when I buy that narrative.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that's what this reminds me of, is just like the fact that for some reason as human beings, we're able to kind of convince ourselves of so much like terrible stuff. And yet, like, to me, it's just, it's epitomized by the fact that like, and it's also encouraging, and I'm glad you're being vulnerable and talking about it, because it's like the fact that you'd even doubt your ability to like mentor somebody is like, it's insane to anyone who observes what you do and your work ethic and your abilities on like YouTube and presenting videos and stuff like that. But I've also experienced this with like Corey and his animations, where Corey, like I gave Corey a compliment at the beginning of this. You guys can back it up. And he quickly found every way to destroy that compliment because he can't handle a compliment. And I love that about Corey. It's one of the reasons Corey is such a great artist and a good animator, is like he does have that doubt, and that doubt is important, right? Like it keeps us on our toes. It keeps us like trying. But it is one of those things where I think like most people outside of Corey would be like, yeah, you're pretty good at animation, you know, like, and honestly, like, for the amount of time like Corey's been doing illustration, it's insane. Like he started way later than any of us and has just like rocket boosted forward on his skill level. But you know, and even just saying that is making him uncomfortable.
I'm fighting the urge to make fun of you right now.
Yeah.
For this entire conversation.
But anyhow, yeah. So that I think it's important though. Like I think it's like it's one of the big tricks of doing this thing for a living, because it is kind of delusional to do art for a living, and yet somehow there is strength in like the ability to kind of like have the confidence to kind of go forward and just do it and let the chips fall where they will, you know?
Yeah. As far as, and the weird thing, and like you're talking about, it's crazy that I would kind of doubt myself that I could do that. And here's the thing, like if the person that came to me was like a beginning student or whatever, and was really raw and everything, it'd be like, yeah, no, I can teach you this stuff. I can show you how to do this. So I can help you along in the way. But so when I start these trainings, I've got a questionnaire that I put out and have them fill out. And we'll have, Mark is the one that I initially started coaching, that has the comic book company. We'll have him on the show and everything. We'll probably talk about mentorship and stuff, but anyway, yeah, he fills out this thing, and it is just super insightful. I mean, he talked about his background and promoting and all the stuff that I do, and he's like so together. I'm like, this guy, I don't know if he needs my help. I mean, this guy, he knows what he's doing here. Everything he was talking about. I was like, wow. I said, this guy might be able to coach me. And it is kind of like in working with him, there's some stuff I gather from him, just the way he is with promotion and all that kind of stuff. But going into it, I just, every time I meet with him, there's like things that I like, that I go over that I just know because I've done, and it just doesn't. I'm like, when I say some of this stuff, I'm like, oh, he's probably heard this before, but he's like, oh my, that's great stuff. So it's weird, sometimes you kind of doubt your experience, and a lot of it maybe you're just too close to, because a lot of the stuff that I talk, and a lot of the stuff is things that I've mentioned on my YouTube channel or whatever. And, and I think to myself, well, I've already talked about this. So he, and I know he watches some of my content, but I got a lot of content out there. And for somebody, somebody can't watch all of that stuff. That's why I'm realizing now, and I kind of I noticed this with like Dan Eakes's channel, and Dan Eakes's channel is kind of recently, it's kind of gone beyond what I'm doing and everything like that. But I notice he repeats a lot of that same content, and he just does it in a little different way or whatever, but it still gets views, because I'm under the impression that, I already did a video on this, but how many people actually saw that video? And I could talk about something in one, like when I talk about, like I just did the last video I did on the 100 Days of Making Comics was talking about sharing some of my inking tools and everything. And I've done that a number of times. And it's usually the same tools, but I still get the question all the time, like, what kind of tools do you use? So, it's so that, you can keep putting out
that rolling ruler, though,
same stuff. Yeah.
You cannot mention the rolling ruler enough.
Like, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
The legit draftsman's map making ruler is the one of the best.
I got it right here.
Yeah. I think what Gary was mentioning too, where he said it's a fallacy that teachers have to be great at a thing or even better at it than their student. And then he was talking about Mike Tyson's coach wasn't as good, and someone taught
Sure.
Mozart, and that's true. And here's the thing, and Corey, I'm sure you've experienced this, maybe not a lot, but one of my favorite things when I was teaching was like, I would have a student who could outdraw me coming in as a freshman, and I was like, holy crap. And what I would do instead with that student is push them to their limit, and they would grow into artists that were far better than I ever could be. And that, to me, that's one of the most rewarding things you can experience in teaching, is like having a student who literally outranks you in skill, and yet having the experience and the knowledge of the medium to be able to kind of push them in directions. Like, even though I can't draw as well as someone, I can still critique their work, and I still have a good eye.
Yeah.
I can still push them to develop in areas they may not have developed yet. And I can push them into territories and make them uncomfortable, but make them grow. And like, that was just cool. I don't know, Corey, have you had students who just ended up destroying what you can do, but you've been able to push them and coach them?
Yeah. I mean, I teach in the communication department. And so it's a very wide set of skills that crosses all kinds of things. And so I come across students that are better writers than me. I come across students that are better photographers than me. I come across students that are better illustrators. They're like all over the place, right? But I think just the fact, like, experience kind of trumps a lot of things. And most of the students that I come across have not yet developed, I don't know what you would call it, but that drive to do stuff, like that drive of like, I am going to, do whatever it takes to get this done type of thing. And so if at the very least I can get them to just like start doing personal projects, I mean, that's a huge level up.
Yeah.
So I just realized I'm drawing on the wrong layer. Sorry.
That happens to me all the time, Corey.
Constant. But yeah, no, I'm like, why is that so light? That's because it was on my layer. But anyway, yeah. So that's the interesting thing is like, is in teaching, you don't have to know everything. You just have to like know how stuff works. Like a lot of times, just being able to get in there and say, oh yeah, I've been there, like this is how you have that conversation with a client, or yeah, I've felt like that. And sometimes you're there to, I mean, I think most people think of teaching as some sort of lecturing situation.
Yeah.
But really the best teaching is getting in there and saying, you're not insane. Like, these are normal feelings, push through and do what you need to do. And it's more of like a coaching situation that you just get people to feel more comfortable doing stuff. And then they start doing better. And anyway, it's interesting to see. It's interesting to see that, like it's, well, I'll tell you what I tell my students all the time. The university is one of the most inefficient and expensive ways to transfer knowledge.
Yeah.
It's a horrible way. It's a horrible information transfer. YouTube is significantly better as an information transfer. Yeah. But I don't think that's what higher education is for. And I don't think that's what teaching is for. Like, if you are just looking to transfer information, go read a book. There's all the information in the world is in books. So go get it. Right. But there is something more to teaching than just knowledge transfer. And so if you're just in school or getting a mentor or hiring a coach or whatever to transfer knowledge, you're probably wasting your money. What you really want to do is you really want to get in there and do it so that you can become something.
Yeah.
And so that's the biggest thing for me that I try to get my students to understand is like, the skills that you learn, you can do that on your own. You don't need to pay tuition for that. You're looking for a transformation. You're looking for a metamorphosis. You're looking to become someone who is powerful enough to do these types of things. And after that, you you learn how to learn, you learn how to think, you learn how to trust your instincts, you learn how to hone your instincts to point them in the right direction. Boy, after that, you don't really need much else, just check in with good people. But yeah, that's the biggest thing that I think people get wrong is they show up to school expecting the school to deliver something to them, when really the school good schools, at least I try to do this in my class, I'm trying to deliver an environment that pushes that person into a situation where they have to become something better than they are.
Yes.
Like even I even teach software. Like I'll teach like Adobe Illustrator and stuff, and I tell them like something is going to kill Illustrator. Something will come along and kill this, or if you don't touch it for 6 months, you won't recognize it anymore. It's going to keep changing. This information that I tell you right now is a means to an end. It's useful, but it's only useful if you become someone who does this stuff all the time. If you're just taking a snapshot, I know these things, I memorized it for the quiz, I know the test or whatever, however people typically learn things. I always tell them, just drop the class, go do something easier. There's significantly easier things that you could do than this.
Yeah, like one of my favorite college professors in school, and I try to keep this in mind in management too, because when you're managing people, there's this weird idea in corporate America where, like, especially in art departments, where it's like the art director should be the better illustrator, the better InDesign layout guy, the better everything. Like they can just, and the weird thing is, the thing that I've found is a benefit to me as an art director is the fact that I can dip my toes into a lot of things, but I'm really good at one thing. and then actually like maybe two things, right? Like I'm a pretty solid illustrator, and I'm pretty confident with type. And then I know a lot about a lot of things, but I don't know all of it. So I manage a team of people who are far better than me at a lot of different things. That's where I want to be. Like if I'm interviewing someone and they're worse than I am at InDesign, and I'm thinking this is a person that I need to use for catalog layout, I don't want to hire somebody who's worse than I am at InDesign, because I have to remind myself every year how to do InDesign. Like I hate InDesign. But I know how to use it, and it's a great program for fulfilling the thing I need. I want experts that are better than me, and so there's tricks, and part of it's just like motivation, support, and also learning compliance tricks, right? Like there's ways to get people to comply to things that they wouldn't comply to. And it levels them up as artists, and you have to like be able to ignite, like Corey was talking about, find whatever that flame is that's going to get somebody's best work, and write it, but don't burn them. It's a really fine balance. But thinking back to college, like my best professors, like I had very technical training too, but my best professors were ones who asked some questions that like 5 years later, I was like, oh, my favorite professor at Cal State Long Beach, I think he's retired now, was this guy named David Hadlock, who his art career was as a director, and as a drawer himself, he was not like the best at drawing that I've had as a professor. He wasn't the best at design that I've had as a professor. But he was also this weird guy who like people would hire, and they would pay him absurd amounts of money. Like they do like an install at like the metro station in LA, and they would pay him like $20,000 to come down for like an hour and just say what he thought. That was my best professor. And part of why I think people were willing to do that for him, whether that was monetary or not, it definitely showed in the classroom, where it's like he'd ask these questions. Like he taught us sequential thinking and how to stage things, like, which is a really hard thing to learn as an illustrator, where it's like you're learning lighting and costuming and and texture. And my wife just explained he's why she does kids books. This was a teacher who would he would find the thing and he would push you hard as hell. And he probably didn't get the best reviews either as a college professor, because he'd burn your roughs in class. But the point is, he would ask a question that would rock your world, and then 2 years later, you would know what he meant. He was the epitome of a Socratic teacher. And I think that's a little bit of what Corey's talking about too, where it's sometimes it's not about having the answers. Sometimes it's about being experienced enough to know where that student needs to go and just give them a couple guides, a couple right questions to guide them in an exploration that's going to grow them, and or help them find that thing that they're passionate about. He did that with my wife, where he was talking to her about illustration, and within a class, she was like, that's what I want to do for my career, is kids books. And I think she went in with not that ambition, but just through a couple guiding questions and a couple books slid her way. I'm just saying that's just a backup to what you're talking about, Scott, where it's you don't have to be a guy who has worked in a comic company to give this guy mentorship, because actually that guy, comics world is small. So if he's in comic publishing, he can talk to other comic publishers.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that hard to do, but he's probably looking to do something that differentiates himself from other comics publishers.
Yeah.
And if he's trying to do that, then what you're talking about, paid mentorship for your artists, nobody does that in comics. And that's brilliant. That should be done in comics. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And we'll kind of wrap it up, but here where Gary says, that's the adage, if you're best in the room, find a new room. And when I, going into this second part of the course that I'm starting tomorrow, they want to know basically what your long-term vision is, what you want to see, when you're gone, when you're away from this world, what you want to leave behind. And one of the things that I said was that I want, obviously I want to create cool stuff that's going to last and leave a legacy, but I want to be that catalyst for somebody else who creates even greater things than me that last even more, or that were even better. I want, that's what I want. So I think, unless you guys have anything to add, I think we'll probably leave it there. I mean, we could talk about this stuff forever, obviously. But as I said, I gotta wake up early and get started on this stuff. But yeah, and I appreciate you guys changing things around for me. But that's what it's all about. It's no, I got to make this happen. We're gonna. I normally do Artcasters on Thursday. Can't do it, but I don't want to cancel it. I just or ask Josh if he could do it. I'm just gonna move it. We're gonna make this happen, and that's kind of what we're doing here. Is we're making things happen. So
yeah.
So let's see, Josh, where can everyone find you?
So before I say where everyone can find me, I just want to say what a cool inspirational topic. And I'm glad you're getting a lot out of the classes. That's awesome. And I can't wait.
And I'll probably be sharing a lot of that stuff as I go, because I think it's going to, change my perspective on a lot of things. So a lot of that's going to come through. It's going to come through the way, on YouTube, the way I teach and the mentorships and all that stuff. So I'm pretty excited.
Awesome. Okay. So I do want to plug, definitely buy my comic 2 Stories, which is a graphic novel about faith and mental illness. That's hand lettered, hand inked, and now handed to you in print. So go purchase that on Amazon. And then if you guys are curious for content, and honestly, I just recommend subscribing to their show. But Comic Book Club, you can just look for it on YouTube or Apple or iTunes or Nerdist. And they had me on, and I have no idea why. Imposter syndrome, because I think the week before they had the guy who co-created The Boys, and I'm I don't deserve to be on that. But nevertheless, we had a really deep, kind of cool conversation about mental struggles that got so heavy we had to give a little disclaimer at the beginning. But it was good. And I definitely recommend it and recommend that show.
Cool.
And then,
it's on YouTube too, you said?
Yeah. They have like a YouTube
cool.
channel as well. They've been running for a long time, and it's weird. It's like a show I've been subscribed to for quite a while, and I was a little surprised they had me on. But then again, it's funny because once again, it's like a perspective thing, right? Because here I am like buddies with Scott, and I think you have more subscribers on YouTube than they do. So, like,
but if they're also on, sometimes that's just after fact. I've noticed like a lot of places, there's certain channels that don't have a lot of subscribers or views, but they have a lot of listeners on their podcast, and they just kind of take that content and put it on YouTube. So that might be the case with that.
Yeah, it's diversified, but still, I'm just saying.
Yeah, and also Josh is when you think about it, you were one of the early pioneers of podcasts on art, if not or if not maybe the second or third, really, I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit there. So.
Yeah, that's the imposter syndrome right there. but I overcame it and had a decent conversation with those dudes. And then I also just recommend everybody check out Corey's stuff because Corey's good. And Corey's going to plug this too. But IRS agency, go to
a link.
Go to the IRSagency.com and those YouTube videos will take you to our YouTube channel, which you should subscribe to, because Scott, Corey, and I will be doing a lot of reviews on books on that channel, and they're very thought out and very like deep analysis. The next one should be really awkward and interesting. So I definitely recommend it. And thanks to Gary too. Gary Hodges in the chats tonight.
Oh, his review is really good. Gary, you should do more reviews like that. You need to do more YouTube content. That was great.
Well, I keep telling him he needs to come on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to get him on for an episode or something. Cool. Anyhow, Corey, where can everybody find your brilliant work, sir? And
you can find my stuff at coreykerr.com. And I keep that up pretty well. So a lot of artists I know, they built their website 10 years ago. But yeah, it's pretty updated. So you can go there, and that wasn't a dig, but I realize it sounded like
I haven't had my 10 years, but I haven't really updated it in the 2 or 3 years that I've had it.
Like pretty diggy dig, dude.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, it's updated, so you can go there, and it's pretty current. And if you go to coreykerr.com/online, that's kind of, I moved to a link tree, or I moved from Linktree to just like, why am I doing this on somebody else's thing? So that's where everything new is just right there. And so if you want to see any of that, do that. You can also, IRSagency.com will take you to where the YouTube channel is going to be, which you need to subscribe to. It'll tell you what's coming up and what books, if you want to participate like Gary did, where you can order them and whatnot and all that jazz. It's on YouTube and Twitch. We're getting a few people on Twitch, and so you can check all that out just on my site. And then if you are the type of person who does Instagram or Twitter or YouTube, go find me on there, and it's always fun to talk to people. So.
All right. And you can find my stuff at circworks.com, specifically this print by Joshua Kimball on my site. It's the only piece of artwork on my site that's done by somebody other than myself, but it does feature my characters, and Josh's interpretation of them. So if you want this, there are very limited quantities available. So go to my online store and pick them up, because they're awesome. And also I wanted to thank everyone in the chat. We had a very lively chat. Sorry we couldn't get to all the comments and everything, but I do appreciate that. And let's see what else. So we do this show every single week, but as you can tell today, it's not always at the same time. Usually we do it Thursday. Today's on a Wednesday. So these things can change. Also, it switches back and forth from Josh's channel to my channel. So, it can get a little confusing, but if you don't want to be confused at all, and if you want to be alerted when we have a new episode coming out, because YouTube doesn't always alert you to these things, the best way to do that is to join our mailing list. And we don't spam you or anything like that. Just every single week, about 30 minutes before we go live, we send out an email, and it'll have the link, and it'll let you know where to go to get that, and you can click on that, and you can join us here live if you wish. And there's a link to that email or that newsletter in the description of this video. So definitely check that out. And we will see everyone next week for another topic and another guest. So see you then.